Welcome back to the shed. Today I want to take a look at the 2023 Hugo Award nominee in John Scalzi's The Kaiju Preservation Society. So what I'd like to do is provide a bit of a plot overview, talk to what I liked, what I didn't like, and we'll make some recommendations. So for those of you who don't know what kaiju are these big dinosaur looking creatures, those Godzilla-like creatures that you see in American and specifically Japanese movies. And I've got a selection behind me here to give you sort of an idea of what some of them look like, but they're these big towering monstrosity dinosaur looking creatures. And what we have is this guy called Jamie Gray, who's working for this tech startup company FoodMud. And he's coming to have his 6 months performance review with his CEO, and he's rather pumped up. He thinks he's going to do extremely well in this performance review, only to find himself demoted to a delivery driver, or deliverator I should say, which I think is a great plug to Neil Stephenson's Snow Crash, for those of you who have watched the movie. So I thought that was pretty cool in a novel, how he brought the deliberator into the narrative of this novel as well. So anyway, poor Jamie, he's right in the middle of a pandemic in COVID times, and he's really down and out, and he's thinking, there's no way I'm going to become a delivery driver. I've just got too many bills, I've got too many things to do. But given where the world was just a few years back now, he really had no choice, and he ended up becoming a delivery driver for FoodMud. And as the story pans out, he does a delivery to an ex-colleague, an old acquaintance, in this guy called Tom. And Tom sees Jamie, and he's always sort of respected Jamie and liked him. And he's offered him a role in this non-government organization, very top secret NGO. And being the times that they were, being down on his luck, Jamie decides to take on the role, but it's all very secretive, right? So he doesn't get a whole lot of information. So he's flown over to this space, and they do a bit of transition. It's all very hush-hush, right? All very top secret. But where he finds himself is in this alternate Earth. And in this alternate Earth, we have these monstrosities, these kaiju creatures, towering above everything, and they seem to be on top of the food chain. And these kaiju are very well done in the novel. But the thing I found most interesting is that they've got all these parasites on them that go off their bodies and go and hunt for them and bring the food back to them, right? Which I thought was really cool. So we find that Jamie is now in a team of a research team doing some research on these kaiju and this alternate Earth. Trying to understand how life here came to be, how they can actually make sense of these rather huge, enormous creatures, and how they can actually survive, because their size will lead you to think that it's impossible to be that size. So anyway, he's going through this process, and there's a whole lot of stuff that happens, and really at the end of the day, we learn so much more about kaiju, how they actually work internally, and in the midst of all of that, we have some twists and turns, and we have, a question as to who are the real monsters. Is it the kaiju or some of the people that have come to exploit these wonderful creatures? So, look, I found it to be a rather enjoyable read. Now, when I finished the novel, I was sort of left with this feeling of, yeah, that's a pretty cool novel. And as you get to the end of the version that I've got here, there's a little interview that John Scalzi provides, and I want to read a quote because I think it very eloquently summarizes my initial thoughts on the novel, and then I'll sort of expand on that with some time to reflect as to what a little bit of time has done for me after reading this novel. But my initial thoughts were pretty much in line with this. It's a pop song. It's meant to be light and catchy, with 3 minutes of hooks and choruses you sing along with, and then you're done, and you go on with your day, hopefully with a smile on your face. And that's, when I read that line, I thought, yeah, that's exactly how I feel about it. But what made it interesting for me is that literally a day or two later, I started to reflect on this novel, and I started to realize that, you know what, it's, I think, just a little bit more than just a pop song. Because as I started to reflect on, the times, and on the back of this novel, it really talks to how difficult of a time John Scalzi had during COVID pandemic. And he wasn't alone, right? I think there were a lot of people who could relate to the pressure that there was on everyone, and the impact it had on creative people like authors and painters and artists alike, right? And I started reading through that and I thought, you know what, this is more than just a pop song. I think it's a true social commentary, right? I think that in, 30, 40, 50 years time, when this thing is well and truly past us and all the wounds are healed, we can look back at this novel and say, yeah, it was a real strange time in our history. And this, I think, is a reflection of that, which is just a good, light-hearted, fun novel that is pure escapism. And I think a lot of people really needed to read a book like this just to escape from it all. So yeah, look, it is a pop song, as John Scalzi said, but I think it's also a very solid social commentary of the times. And I think a novel that would have helped some people just escape from everything that was happening and immerse yourself in this wonderful world run by Kaiju with huge atomic powers, which I thought was really interesting, right? So yeah, it's a bit surprising, right? Like I said, my initial thought was, yeah, just a nice, light, easy read. But on further reflection, I think it's got a lot more to say about the times. So I did find the Kaiju interesting. I don't think they were necessarily groundbreaking. I really did like the idea of those parasites that hung onto the Kaiju. I thought that was unique. I don't think I've ever seen that in any science fiction movie or novel, so I thought that was very cool. I did really enjoy that idea. But the Kaiju themselves are not new. We've seen it countless times in Japanese movies as well as Hollywood movies these days, so it's not new, the concept, but I did find there were some elements in there that still made it for an interesting and fresh new take on these Kaiju. I also like John Scalzi's writing. If you've read Red Shirts, it's very similar. Structurally, the novel is pretty much the same as well, where, this Jamie Gray guy gets thrown into this environment, like they did in Red Shirts, thrown into that spaceship environment. He's trying to make new friends, trying to understand how this world operates. So I think structurally, the novel was very similar to Red Shirts. I don't think it was quite as witty or as humorous as it was in Red Shirts, but I still think there was, it's the same author, so you do sort of get the same kind of humor, but I don't think it was as impactful, at least to me, as it was in Red Shirts. And I mentioned in the past, Red Shirts, I'm very biased towards that novel, given that I'm a Star Trek fan, right? But I'm also a pretty big Kaiju fan, as you can probably tell from all the little Kaiju I've built behind me here. But yeah, I did enjoy the novel, and I would say that the idea was fine. The characters were fine. It's just a nice, light-hearted read. So what didn't I like about the novel? Look, I think it was, the characters were a bit weak and the concepts were not necessarily groundbreaking and unique, but I don't think they're meant to be. Like, it even says so at the back, right? I think this was just John Scalzi's way of saying, because he actually mentions at the back of this book that he was in the middle of a very difficult book, one of his best books it appears to be, but it was a very powerful novel, and he was just not in a headspace to get into character and write that novel with everything that was going on around him. So I think this is really what it is. It's just, I need to get away from it all. I don't want to be caught up in what's happening around me. I want to escape to this Kaiju world where all these monsters exist, and I want to really understand what makes them drive and ultimately determine who the real monsters are. Saying that, I think it's a very enjoyable read. It's a very fast read. It's, what is it? It's 255 pages or so, right? So it's around about 250 pages, but it goes very quickly. It's just a quick, easy, fun book to read. So what about recommendations? Look, I'm a big John Scalzi fan, so I can recommend this novel without any real qualms. Apart from some minor footnotes, right? And that footnote being is, don't expect to get some groundbreaking, revelations here. It's a pretty straightforward novel, pretty straightforward concept, and it is, like John Scalzi said, just a bit of pop culture, just to get you away from it all, to read, enjoy, and not necessarily think too much about, except for leaving a smile on your face. But like I said, I do feel it lingered a little bit longer than John Scalzi potentially thought when he wrote that little footnote at the back of the book. Because for me, I think, like I said, like I mentioned, it is also a bit of a social commentary of the times. So recommendations. Look, I got this as a Christmas gift, so thank you so much for giving me this opportunity for reading this novel. I much appreciate it. It was a good, fast read, exactly what I was looking for at the time. So a very happy recipient of this Christmas gift. And I would say that as a recommendation as well. It will make a good gift for anyone who's into science fiction because it's just a fun, easygoing pop song, right? So what about rankings? Well, we can't do our sci-fi shed ladder because it didn't actually win the award. But even if it had, I don't think it would have ranked as highly as Red Shirts. I would say it would be somewhere towards the bottom end of our ladder. But as a book in its own right, I would give this probably a 3.5 out of 5 stars. It was just a good, fast, quick, easy read, but nothing more than that. I don't think it'll be a very memorable novel. I think the title will give some recollection of what it was, the Kaiju Preservation Society. But apart from that, I think the characters are forgettable. I think the plot is forgettable. And there's really not much to the concept that will make you continuously think about that. Except perhaps for those parasites, right? I think that was conceptually pretty cool. But yeah, look, still a fun read, recommended read, and I hope you get the time to enjoy it one day. Thank you for joining me in the shed, as always, and I'll see you next time in the shed. Welcome back. Today I want to take a look at the 2023 Hugo Award Dog Barking Strategists. Dog's annoying, mate. Hopefully it will be quiet soon.